We are going to be assembling our handmade sketchbooks today. I have a paper that I'm going to use as the cover of my book, and then I have a variety of different papers here. Some of them are the handmade papers that I made. So I've got my paint scraper paper, I've got my coffee dyed paper, I've got a texture sheet and watercolor resist paper, and then I also have just some blank papers that I've chosen from the pile of papers on the table. So I have a wide variety of papers here. I'm going to start by choosing 15 papers. I want you to use 15 different pages. You can choose whether they're all the same size or different sizes. You can see I have some big ones, some little ones, some solid, some not. You can choose which papers you want, but you should have 15. This should include the 5 that you made during our paper making day. So you're going to start with your 15 papers. We need to fold all of these papers and our cover in half. Now you could just easily, just fold this and call it a day, but in order for this sketchbook to stay laying as flat as possible, we're going to use something called a bone folder. A bone folder is basically something you use to make sure the crease is nice and pressed down. So I'm going to fold these pages in half. I'm going to fold it corner to corner. And then I'm just gonna start by pushing it down with my fingers, and then I'm gonna use my bone folder to make sure that this crease is completely flat. And I'm gonna do that for all 15 of my pages. So here's number 1. You might have more than, I think I might have one extra page here, but you might need to go back to the table and grab another page or two, or put some papers back when you are done. So we're aiming for 15 here. I also need to fold my cover. You will notice that it looked a little bit easy for me to fold all of my pages because mine, all except for one, were actually pre-folded. I'm just folding them again and using the bone folder to show you how to use the tool. All right, so I've counted out my 15 pages and I have my cover. Next, I'm going to set the cover aside. I need to arrange my 15 pages. This book does not have to be like neat or perfect. I'm going to kind of pick and choose how I want to organize these pages. So to start, I think I want one of my biggest pages on the outside. This is just going to be to help me get them all to kind of like line up neatly. I'm going to pick a big page for the outside and a big page for the inside. So this is going to be the last page that I put in. From there, I'm gonna just kind of open this up, and you can hold it in your hand or flat on the table, it's up to you. But then you're going to just kind of arrange the pages in here. You do not have to arrange them all in the center. You don't have to arrange them all at the bottom. You can kind of like scatter these. What I will say is that we are going to be using something called a saddle stitch, and we're gonna make a saddle stitch every inch. So I wanna make sure that my pages are gonna hit preferably 2 of the holes, and you'll kind of see as I finish this what I mean by that. So I'm gonna actually see, I don't want this page to touch the bottom all the way, but I do want it, I'm guessing that my first stitch will start right about here. So I want to make sure that this page is going to hit right there. This isn't a requirement, but it is something that's going to be helpful for you. And then I'm just going to continue to layer my pages. All right, so there are all of my pages. And then I'm gonna put this stack of pages inside the cover of my book. I'm going to center the cover so the pages kind of fit in the middle. From here, I only have one binder clip with me right now. Binder clip is this thing right here. We will have more available for you as we're making this, but I'm gonna just put a binder clip here to grab the papers as best I can as I am completing the rest of this, the rest of these steps. I will make sure that I have the right size binder clips and that I have maybe one for each page. So you can put one on one side and one on the other. It's gonna just make it wiggle around a little bit less for you, and it'll make it easier to bind. All right, so now I mentioned we are gonna put a saddle stitch here and we're gonna sew the book together, and that will keep all of the pages together. So I am going to use my ruler to measure out, I'm gonna measure out the middle of my book. So the middle, my book happens to be 8.5 inches wide. So half of 8.5 is 4 1/4. So I'm gonna put a dot right at 4 1/4. That's this one right here, 4 1/4. And then from there, I'm gonna do 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch. Flip it around. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is where I'm going to sew my pages together. Okay, so I'm gonna sew it all through here. This is going to hit the majority of my pages, but it's not gonna hit every page all the way from top to bottom. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. Okay, next. We are going to use a tool called an awl to poke these holes in the book. Okay, so we're poking holes in this book. These tools, they are very sharp. You need to be mindful of where your fingers are on the underside of the book. Okay, so you need to be very careful of where your fingers are. I am gonna hold the book up off the table and I'm gonna push this through the crease of all of my pages. So you will see me do that shortly. All right, so I'm gonna start with the middle. And I'm just gonna push that all the way through. So you will see it go all the way through. Okay, we wanna make sure it goes all the way through. I'm trying to make sure that this book does not wiggle and my pages stay all lined up in the crease. And I'm just gonna push this through here, all of these holes. Remember, watch your fingers. I don't want anybody bleeding today, please. Okay, so watch your fingers. I'm gonna flip it around and do it again. All right, so now I have all of my holes. So I'm gonna put my awl back so somebody else can use it. Next is to sew this together. Okay, so we're gonna sew this together. We may have a variety of string available to you, just kind of depending on what we have in stock or available at the current moment. So this thread right here is, this is, I believe, a waxed bookbinding thread. So it's made specifically for bookbinding, but you might also find regular thread, embroidery thread, something called embroidery floss, which is colored. You could also do this with yarn, just kind of whatever string is nice and sturdy. So I'm gonna use this. And then I need a needle. So I'm gonna grab one of these needles. So I have a decent length of string here, and you basically need enough to like go through each of these holes twice. So like I'm gonna need at least this much, you know, but it's okay if you have a little bit extra. So I'm gonna go ahead and thread this needle. And I'm gonna pull it through, but I'm not gonna tie a knot. So I'm gonna use a single thread. I'm not gonna tie a knot here, okay? So I'm gonna take my needle, I'm gonna lift this book up again, and I'm gonna remind you, these needles, they're not sewing needles, so they're not super duper sharp, but they are still sharp enough to poke you and draw blood. So please make sure that you're being mindful of where you're putting this needle. I'm gonna go through the center hole, and this should be fairly easy because we've poked all the holes in advance. I'm gonna pull that through. I have way too much thread here, I'm telling you right now. So I'm gonna poke that through. And then I'm going to sew up and down each one of these holes. So I'm gonna go on one side to start. And I'm gonna pull it all the way snug. Then I'm gonna go down again. And then up through the back. And if you haven't wiggled your book too much, it should be fairly easy for this to go through. I must have wiggled just a little bit there. Okay, so I'm coming up, and then I'm gonna go down again. And then what I'm gonna do, so I just went down through this top hole. When I flip this around, I'm going back through this hole here, because we want a solid stitch, not every other one like it is now. So I'm gonna go back through this one, and then down. So I'm filling in the spaces that I missed the first time. And I wanna keep this thread pulled nice and tight. And then I'm coming up again. And then down. All right, so now I'm back to the middle. Now I'm coming up again so I can do the other half of my book. And then remember, when you get to the top, you're gonna just come around. I'm pulling it nice and snug. And then I'm putting it back through this hole. And I'm working my way back towards the middle. All right, when you get to the middle, you're gonna pull your strands nice and tight. On this side, you are going to loop your needle through one of the stitches. And then you are going to make a knot. You're gonna make a knot right here. I wanna pull this tight when I'm making my knot. Okay. And then I'm just gonna push my needle through, back to the other side. And then I'm gonna work on the inside again. And then I'm gonna tie it to this loose end. So I'm actually gonna tuck it under again, just to be safe. And then to make my life a little bit easier, I'm gonna take my needle off, and then I'm gonna tie this. So you only need probably 2 more knots, but if you wanna be safe, you can add a third here. All right. And then when you are cutting this extra thread off, leave just a little bit so that the loose ends don't actually accidentally unravel themselves. You can go ahead and take your binder clip off, and then we will just fold this down. And there you have your handmade sketchbook with all of your different pages in it. It is bound together with the saddle stitch. Everything should be held snugly in place, and it will give you a place to start experimenting.